Oh, Xi. But before we get to that, Vladimir Putin went to Mariupol, which was a surprise visit, and it was kind of wild too. Like he's just, I mean, it's like a George Bush going to Iraq style situation. You know what I mean? Let's take a look.
Chinese leader Xi Jinping arrived in Moscow for a 3-day state visit. This is his first visit to Russia since Russia invaded Ukraine. And later this morning, he will hold a one-on-one meeting with Vladimir Putin. This as Western leaders grow very wary of the two nations' deepening cooperation. Ivan Watson joins us live from Kharkiv, Ukraine. Ivan, thank you very much for being with us. This is such a significant meeting, and it comes just on the heels of President Putin going to Mariupol right after he visited Crimea and Rostov-on. There is so much at stake here, and the West obviously very concerned, even though China is billing this as a mission of peace.
Right, and the Ukrainians watching this very nervously. And that's because Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, they keep talking about their friendship with no limits, this incredible, basically, alliance between Russia and China. Xi Jinping sent a letter to Russian state media before this trip. He says this is the 10th time he's visiting Russia since he became president.
I did. I called you your lib gaming. You are a libtard. Also, answer my fucking Instagram DMs. Okay? Goddamn.
40th meeting with Vladimir Putin. He had some digs in his letter, thinly veiled, at the U.S., complaining about hegemony and calling for a more democratic, multipolar world. What he did not mention at all was Russia's invasion of Ukraine a year ago and the ongoing war. Instead, Xi Jinping referred to this as the Ukraine crisis and claimed that Beijing is neutral in this, that he wants peace negotiations and dialogue. He has yet to speak directly with the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, since Russia's invasion a year ago. And when it comes to the International Criminal Court issuing an arrest warrant on Friday against...
Yeah, Xi Jinping is going there to arrest Vladimir Putin personally. I think that's what he's going to do.
Vladimir Putin for alleged war crimes. Well, the Chinese Foreign Ministry has weighed in on that. It is calling for the ICC to be objective and impartial, to respect the jurisdictional immunity enjoyed by a head of state, and to avoid politicization and double standards. So take that into context when you discuss China's claimed neutrality in this war.
And China has at no point throughout this war condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine. They remain a huge buyer of Russian oil, helping finance all of this. And one of the things that the West, and John Kirby here...
if Putin and Donald Trump got arrested on the same day, I think that would be like the ultimate nut for liberals, okay? Like, liberals would chase that high for the rest of their fucking lives, and they would never be able to achieve that. It's like Charlie making fun of Sneeko, who has a humiliation fetish, right? Like, it's like Moist Critical humiliating Sneeko in front of like millions, tens of millions of people. Like, he is never going to get that nut ever again, okay? He's never going to get that nut ever again. If that were to happen, liberals would die, I think. Like, they would literally die coming. They would come so fucking hard that they'd be like, I have no more bodily fluids inside of me, and it's over. Like, I'm dead now. Anyway. The unattainable nut. China is kidnapping Uyghur teenage girls and forcing them to live in Han Chinese family. That's like that. This is the guy who would also come, I assume. So liberals would ascend to another plane of reality. So as far as this goes, I wonder what's gonna happen. I don't know. I don't know what the fucking Xi Jinping plans for Russia are. They put out like the most boilerplate, we got to do some ceasefire peace negotiations type shit. I don't know if they benefit tremendously from ongoing conflict in Ukraine. I do know that they like playing the role of America now, as they did with the Saudi Arabia, Iran, normalizing relationships between Saudi Arabia and Iran. So, they are relying on Russian oil, which they're mentioning here clearly, and gas. But ultimately, I don't know. I mean, it's not like America has a dog in the fight to continue the war. One, because it the good enemy to unite the Western world against. Classic Cold War shit that you can drum on. It justifies America's NATO expansion all around the world. 100% it justifies it, as it is expanding even further. And more importantly than all of that, there's a material benefit to the United States of America. That material benefit being basically a steady flow of weapons. A steady flow of weapons that you can sell and you can send into Ukraine. That continues the cycle for our military-industrial complex. I mean, it's great, right? It's awesome for them. On the other hand, when I think about China, I think they want to have a very they want to have a we are the new hegemonic power kind of attitude, which is understandable because they kind of are, right? But they don't have as robust of a weapons industry as the United States does. So I don't really know. I mean, I guess I know why they are aligning with I know what the BRICS interest is here, right? Which is that it's a multipolar world, and what better way to stage the what better way to show the rest of the world that they are a major player in the global arena. So I don't know. I don't know if it's it's anything more than showing the world that they're a power player and trying to come across the reasonable party in the room instead of the United States of America that's consistently looking like a rabid dog. You know what I mean? Because as far as domestic interest goes for European nations, when I think about it, obviously an end to any kind of posturing, any kind of conflict in Ukraine is beneficial for them because they want energy, they want cheaper energy. The United States can only offer so much energy. They don't trust the United States in general, I don't think, and it's making it look it's hurting their domestic chances internally. When you have right-wing forces and even some left-wing forces that are constantly and consistently complaining about the war in Ukraine, saying you're turning into America, you're quite literally fucking, you're more focused on Ukraine when people are cold and people can't pay for their energy bills, right? So that's that's an issue for them. So they're interested in trying to find an end to that conflict, and I know America is benefiting from a never-ending conflict. So maybe China wants to come across the reasonable global power in the room. China is dependent on food and energy imports. If the U.S. cut off the flow of international trade, it could put China in a serious strategic bind. The Chinese government has been clear that their goal is to make themselves immune to the U.S. naval blockade. Russia is a major energy and food exporter with a major land border. It's strategic calculus. No, I understand why they are aligned with Russia. I'm just saying, what could there be? What kind of additional interest could they have? I'm trying to figure out if they are literally trying to sell arms to Russia beyond their geopolitical interests. That's what I'm trying to figure out, because it can't just be pandering. Even though a lot of Chinese partners and a lot of countries that China has a direct interest in, politically especially, are reliant on supplies from Ukraine as well. So that probably plays another role in the secondary impact of the war continuing in Ukraine. Faustini, the oldest non-banned libtake chatter here. China being the role of America in the Middle East is good. They can enjoy that. And Russia will eventually be a client state of China, but they have no interest in a renewed, strengthened Russia. I don't think that they care about strength in Russia one way or the other. Yeah, they're finalizing a huge deal about gas. So Dutz, man, Russia will take Australia's place as the top source of gas to China. No, they definitely have an energy partnership, 100%. But who knows? I mean, we'll see what happens. I think it's a lot of trying to establish a precedent for invasion in this day and age of developed nations. Yeah, but it's a horrible precedent. Like, it's not. No one is going to look to like what Russia is doing, think that it's like valid and just, and then go, oh man, now China is invading Taiwan, and that's also moral and just. Like, no, it's like, if anything, I think Xi Jinping and the Chinese form of governance, at least looking at like their international affairs, has shown that they're not interested in flexing military power so far. If there is a lesson to be learned from what Putin did in Russia, or what Putin did in Ukraine, it's like pretty obvious that if they were to forcibly try to enter Taiwan in any way, when the overwhelming majority of Taiwanese people are also like not interested in changing anything about the dynamic. A lot of them want independence, but a lot of them are just like, don't rock the boat, don't rock the boat, don't rock the boat, regardless of what fucking America says here in Western news. That would only galvanize the rest of the world against China. They're seeing what's happening to Russia currently, and why the fuck would they want that for themselves when they already have like a decent back and forth with respect to like the way that trade continues? And it's not like the United States of America, regardless of what their posture is, or regardless of what Joe Brandon says every time he has a fucking brain fart, still is absolutely on board with a one China policy. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what they say on television. They might turn around and be like, oh yeah, Taiwan's independence will be defended down to the, every last person. But ultimately they are officially very much on board and continuing the one nation, two states, one China policy. But who knows? I am openly admitting that I don't know. I'm just looking at what they have done. I'm looking at what they've done so far with respect to other countries and what their interests may be.
In the U.S. and the White House has been warning against is if China were to come out after this visit, Ivan, and say, well, there should be a peace deal right now, that would not be palatable by Ukraine and the West, given that Russia has taken more territory than when this all began.
Sure, and has declared that it is annexing Ukrainian territory seized since the invasion of last year. And to underscore that, you had Vladimir.
Like, I'll keep it $150, dude. Russia is supposed to have more experience with land wars, ground invasions, which, objectively they do, both historically and also in contemporary developments. Okay? China doesn't have a single version of that. Like, they have none of that. So if I'm Chinese and I'm looking at fucking Russia getting their dicks pulled out, okay, and plastered on the fucking timeline, I'm not making any fucking aggressive military action. Because look at that. Look at what's going on. Okay, Vietnam, sure, but it's not exactly a long history of wonderful, positive, reinforcing affairs. You also said Putin wouldn't invade. Maybe sometimes people don't make rational decisions. I would not say that Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin behave in the same way at all. If anything, Xi Jinping has been infinitely more rational than Vladimir Putin historically. I mean, that's, yeah. People will be like, oh, he's not smart. And by the way, none of this pertains to like his actions domestically. I'm simply talking about international affairs. So, but who knows? Like I said, it could happen. I'm not making any predictions. Okay, I promise you, I'm not making predictions at all. The only prediction I'll make is the top of the hour ad break will come. Okay, right now. And the second prediction to that is that you will avoid the top of the hour ad break if you are subscribed for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime. By connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, you get one free Prime subscription a month. You can also get gifted a sub if you're lucky. Okay, I'm predicting that some of you might get lucky and get gifted a sub. But other than that, you know, make your own luck. Here's the 3-minute ad break now. Matt NLT, thank you for the 5 get the subs, allowing 5 people to no longer see the ads at the top of the hour. Cracking Mick Westside, thank you for the 5 gifted subs as well. All right, let's continue.
Putin on Saturday, fresh from this ICC arrest warrant, visiting the Russian-occupied Ukrainian city of Mariupol. The Kremlin says he landed by helicopter. He drove himself into the outskirts of that shattered city and visited an apartment building that the Russian government just built. While he's meeting with some of the residents there, Poppy, you hear a voice off camera that our linguists say somebody was yelling, "This is all a show. It's not true." This time last year, the Russian military had encircled that city and was bombing it from land, sea, and air, destroying much of it. And I was interviewing residents who were fleeing, who described spending weeks under bombardment, terrified, hiding in basements, burying neighbors who got killed by Russian artillery in the front yards of their apartment buildings. And I spoke to one of the women I met a year ago who escaped. She's a refugee overseas. She said seeing Vladimir Putin in her hometown is like seeing a serial killer return to the scene of the crime.
Yeah, of course it is, and that really says it all. Ivan Watson, thank you for the reporting from Kharkiv. Talk to us about what you expect from these 3 days, given the fact that that Xi Jinping just said moments ago, reiterated his willingness to work with Vladimir Putin to, quote, safeguard the international order. This is after Putin, just before invading Ukraine, talked about their relationship, these two leaders, as a no-limits partnership.
That's right. I worry about two different things here. The first Ivan raised before, which is, do we see arms? And, basically, do we see the Chinese getting further into this war? I think the second thing to look for is whether or not in some kind of peace proposal for an armistice or a ceasefire, essentially the Chinese come in on the side of the Russians to try to cement the gains that they have right now. And that's why you're hearing from the Americans and from President Zelensky and Ukrainians great concern that China would seek in some way to reward Russia and basically freeze this the way the Korean conflict has been frozen now for 50 or 60 years.
This seems to be what they're really worried about, the U.S., in terms of trying to preempt. John Kirby, who's going to come on the program a little later today, has been saying it would not be acceptable. So China's trying to play this peacemaker, but it would not be acceptable for China to come out and say, okay, let's push towards peace right now in this moment, because in this moment, Russia has taken more Ukrainian territory than obviously before the invasion.
Okay, but
that's right. And
okay, I hate this conversation. A lot of liberals said this too. That's how wars end. Like, no matter what. That's how wars end. That's just how wars end. It can end with like a total surrender and evisceration of one side. But that's ultimately, no matter what happens, that's how wars end. Okay? Like, that's it.
That's a significant worry. On the other hand, the Chinese have to be a little bit cautious here. And they have to be cautious because they're worried about Europe. They would like to make sure that Europe does not join in any sanctions against China, that Europe and the United States do not tighten this bond that has been created since the war began. And, you know, Europe's a major trading partner for them and is continuing to take a good deal of their technology. So I think they're not going to want to get in too deep. And that's one reason I think that they've probably been cautious so far in providing weapons to the Russians. The problem is the Russians don't have very many other places to turn right now. Their only other sources are Iran and North Korea. And obviously the quality of that is not up to what China can give them.
Also, David, what it says about China on the world stage, because this comes after China just brokered that diplomatic deal with Iran and Saudi Arabia. Now we're seeing them try to assert themselves in this way, saying, you know, that they are this powerful influence when it comes to international order.
They would love nothing more, Caitlin, than to play the role that the United States played during much of the Cold War and post-Cold War period, which is the central player.
Dog. Okay. That's what. Wait, what? Bro. What? I wouldn't say Cold War. I'd say post-Cold War, sure. During the Cold War, the role that the United States played was insane, dog. They were not keeping the peace, homie. What the fuck? That's a wild fucking take, but to be charitable to what he's saying, I think he's doing liberal analysis of the Cold War, where the United States was like supposedly cutting deals and peacemaking. Yeah. They were really peaceful, dude. Always, like historically, the most peaceful.
That everybody had to come to so that they could organize the world on the basis and the rules that they consider advantageous. And they think the United States did this from the end of World War II in 1945 through to just a few years ago. And that's why it was so important to them to play this role between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and would be important to them to do this now. And of course, the United States not only doesn't want to give up its position on that, but it also is suspicious that China is not the neutral player that it pretends to be. Of course, that's what the Chinese say about the United States.
All of it very interesting optics for Vladimir Putin, especially after just visiting Mariupol, like going to the war zone, David. What do you make of that?
It is. I mean, he was doing two or three things there, Don. The first is he wanted to say, this is my territory now. You know, this is an area that obviously they not only bombed and destroyed, but it's an area where they kidnapped many of those children for whom he was indicted by the International Criminal Court. I think the second thing he was saying was, the indictment means nothing to me. In fact, they'll continue with all of their activities.
To be honest, the U.S. is just as awful as Russia. Bitch, what do you mean? The United States has done what Russia is doing to Ukraine so many times, and with more guns, and with infinitely less scrutiny from the international community. Russia wishes they could be as bad as the United States, okay? Like, there's no comparison. That doesn't mean that, like, Russia's not doing horrifying shit in Ukraine. They are. But, like, Putin wishes he could have America's dick, bro. What are you talking about? Holy shit. Americans don't even think about the several countries we're bombing currently. Yeah, like, just, no, I can't even, like, begin to compare it. Like, that's a crazy competition that every country will lose dramatically to.
In Mariupol that they have done until now. So it was a real act of defiance.
It's like funny to consider because this is the 20th anniversary of like shock and awe too. Like literally. Just Like, we are so fucking gross, dude. Yeah, this is the 20th anniversary of the Iraq invasion. Yeah, like right now, on this day.
And clearly getting the endorsement of having Xi Jinping show up for their 39th meeting since the two of them took over as leaders. That's pretty significant.